Hello and welcome. This is Mouse Gunner, and we're back with some more Factorio. And I'm here with Rotype yet again.
Hello, everyone.
And I think, at least as far as my game plan goes for this episode, I'm going to do some semi-automation of our science production. So now that we have them available, if I open up my inventory and go over here, I should have assembly machines. I think I was calling them factories before. That's what I called them, at least in my head. But I'm going to be using a couple of these to try and get our science automated on a smaller scale so we don't have to worry about it and produce it in our pocket and what have you. So,
Yeah, and even in my grand, I call them grand, what I call a grand factory with all this big planning and everything, I usually end up with a kind of spaghettified early science layout just because to build the bus, you tend to need some of the technology that you're not going to get unless you either do it yourself or build just kind of a spaghetti factory.
and as I was discussing in the end of the last video, what I need to do that is I need to produce science, which requires copper plates and iron gears. So the first factory I'm going to need to build is one that produces iron gears. So I'm going to do that now. And just go ahead and build actually two of these assembly machines because that's what we're going to need in the end. And while I'm doing this, what are you up to over there, Rotype?
I'm waiting for transport belt to build in my pocket.
Okay.
I like making these big buses, but they just require a lot of transport belt, which is a lot of iron. Suppose if I were smart about it, I could automate the production of transport belt in a spaghetti type manner.
Well, I'm trying to do this in an efficient way, but I don't know if it's going to turn out that way.
This is also, I suppose, a good chance to talk about, even if we're not going to hit them, another aspect of these ratios I was talking about. So we talked about it for power. We can talk about it again for science pack here, where you can see that one science pack takes 5 seconds to build and requires one iron gear wheel. If we go to gear wheel, you can see you get one gear wheel every half second. So obviously one gear wheel factory will supply many, many science pack factories. And you can do the math on, how much it is based on time and all these different things. But that's what's going to lead into a lot of the layouts that we're going to be using in the future. For now, it'll probably just be whatever fits.
I guess I'm sitting here worrying about my spacing, and I guess I can always move some aspects of this as well. So for now, I'm going to put this...
Yeah, that's a trap I fall into sometimes, especially with all of my plans that I try to have, is trying to plan everything. I mean, it's good to have a plan, but sometimes you just need to get things built before you can even make the plan. As I said, you need kind of a mini science factory before you can even build the bus.
Well, we'll figure it out with belt probably or something. So I'll just fit the other one here. All right, so first one I'm going to need to set up. And what I'm doing is I'm choosing what the recipe is. So same kind of thing that we see here interface as what we have in our inventory. So I want the iron gears. So I just go ahead and click that. And then it's going to start producing them. As it gets the iron plates, it's going to produce. So that aspect is taken care of. So the next thing we're going to need is the science. And I'm going to need to get copper plate over there. So I'm just going to use a little bit of belt. Not a lot, but just a little bit. Get it where we need it. So I'm going to probably need one more inserter than I had planned, but that's okay. And I'm sure there's a more efficient way of doing this, but I don't worry too much about efficiency. And you'll find that out as you watch the series. I do need some resources here, so I'm going to go ahead and steal them.
I've decided to piggyback off of your design and build myself a belt factory.
Okay, that works. And now I need some inserters, so we'll just go ahead and produce some of those. So we've got that going, and then we need... Okay, so everything's nice and powered up. Now we just need to select the recipe, so science, and there we go. Now this won't produce all that fast, but it will produce, and that's all we care about right now. And now I'm going to need to plop down the science. So first I'm going to grab another inserter here. I might as well build a few of these while I'm at it. I'm going to need to power it though, so I might have to bring a line, but that's okay.
I suppose you know, but we've never actually mentioned this. When you're building something, for example, in this crafting menu, you left click, you get 1. You can see here, I just queued up 1. You right click, you get 5. And if you shift click, you get all. So you can see here, right now, I have the option to build 50. That's just how much resources I have. If I shift click, I get all of them. Kind of a nice little thing to know for UI and building things.
Mm-hmm. And there we go. So we have everything set up, and Rotype also, as he mentioned, started building belt off of the same line that we have going here. So as this goes, the inserter he has here will pull gear.
Occurred to me it wasn't actually working. I was wondering why.
Yeah, I was looking at that myself.
I hadn't given it all of its materials.
There we go. Now, if you're wondering why this isn't moving so much, it's because this takes so long to produce. So if we, yeah, sorry. It takes so long for, so if we sit here for a little while, if I've done this correctly, once we get down enough, it should pump over some science to fill it out. I also filled it in with some science in my pocket, so I think that's what we're waiting for. So while we're waiting on that, why don't we go do something else? So what are you up to over here?
I'm just increasing the iron supply because the first thing I think that's going to happen as soon as we get this logistics research, I'm going to split off some of this raw iron and start building a pretty large furnace area. So I want to make sure while I'm here and while I'm waiting for logistics to finish, I might as well build some electric miners and increase the production of this raw iron ore.
Yeah, see, that's something we haven't talked about. The next priority that you need to go after, at least as far as I understand, is the big furnace production, so you can produce a lot of copper plates and iron plates as you need them. So that is what Rotype is setting up right now.
Yeah, and it's interesting how, I mean, I suppose this happens in any game. The definition of beginning game is you'll set up something that looks just massive, like you'll never use all that, and then sure enough, just a few minutes later, you're out.
And these resources we have will eventually dry up. Now, one thing we haven't really discussed, and that is the setup of our particular game. We are playing on peaceful mode, and what that means is that there are enemy creatures called biters that are out in this world, and as the pollution builds up, normally speaking, if you're playing the normal game, that makes them angry and they come after you and try and kill you. On peaceful game mode, that won't happen until we attack them first. They're still on the map somewhere, but they're not going to attack us until we attack them. And now we've done this specifically so that we can do this as a tutorial series and come through and explain a lot of the processes without being interrupted by the biters. But eventually, once we attack the biters, they will come after us and they'll keep coming after us. So that is one thing to keep in mind.
Right, and I think, I don't know if you mentioned, but this, on the map at least, is you can see this kind of red flickering at this moment, haze almost. I mean, I'm envisioning it as a haze, but this red tint over certain areas, that is the pollution, which we talked a little bit about before, but that's what triggers these biters. If they weren't in peaceful mode, this is, once they kind of are inflicted with this pollution, that's when they come after us, and that's what that is on the map.
Now, I don't actually see any biters on the map, but we also don't have radar, so we're not looking at much of the map. As a matter of fact, I might set that up because we probably should have the power production to maintain something like that.
Yeah, we should be good on power for quite a while with these 10. Power is definitely another one of those things where you can set it up in the early game and think you have plenty for a while, and then next thing you know, you're out.
So what the radar is going to do, actually, I'll have you explain it because I'm not sure if I understand it fully.
Sure. So have you placed one?
Yes, just now.
Okay, so on the map here, you can see there's kind of this lit up area. And right now it's this big box. And then you can see towards the bottom left, there's also this little kind of cutout area. And that's basically like you can think of it kind of as like fog of war, where the radar is what's covering this large box. And then individuals have their own little smaller area, smaller box around them that kind of uncovers the fog of war as well. So that's why I'm standing a little bit farther away. So mine kind of exits the region of the radar, which is why we have this little cutout area as well. Now, the map itself will update when you clear the fog of war for that tile. So you can see right now we have, if you zoom out a little bit, you see there's one tile up towards the top left that has been uncovered. When it is uncovered again, that piece of map will be updated. Now, normally there's not much to change on the map, but biters do kind of roam around. They'll set up new bases and such, and you won't necessarily see that until you uncover the next, or you uncover the fog of war on that tile again. So it's very similar to fog of war in any other type of game, at least the way it's usually implemented. Now, you saw a second ago that we got another tile, and it was uncovered from the blackness. The fog of war was removed, and now the fog of war is back. That is the operation of the radar. So as I said, the radar uncovers the fog of war in this big square. It also will scan in a circular manner. You see, it just did another one right now around the map to a particular radius. And I don't remember what the radius is off the top of my head, but it will continue to scan around in that radius, uncovering the map itself out of the blackness, which I guess is, I don't know, super fog of war. So you can uncover what the terrain looks like, which will also uncover things like biters at that moment, resources, things like that, water, land. And then once it's all done, in a little while, we can open it up and look again. You'll see a bigger area of this blackness cleared out. It will then continue to sweep around and do this uncovering the fog of war. So that's how you'll catch things like biters moving around or other things like that would change. So that's basically how the radars work. Another interesting thing about radars is if you are either not on peaceful mode or if you are in peaceful mode and have aggravated the biters by killing them, radars are most often one of the first things that they will come in and attack. So number one, you have to protect them, but you can also use that as a little bit of a decoy type of lure to certain areas. If you want to, say, defend a particular area and have another area that might be a little less defended, you can put a radar there to encourage the biters to move in that direction.
And now we're going to take a look at our production over here. So what are you setting up here with these furnaces, or at least started to set up? This is going to be the main smelting line, and he's still working on it, but gives you kind of an idea of how this is going to work. And more or less, you have to deal with your input of goods. So you have coal and your whatever it is. So let's say it's iron, and then you're going to have your output of iron plates. And I believe he does it in the middle, correct? That's going to be the output of the furnaces is in the middle, and then the outer area is going to be the resources of, well, we'll see here in a second as he does it. And we're using the splitters. So have you explained the splitters yet?
I have not. So this is one of those examples where I like to have my bus, but sometimes you need a little bit of science to get the materials to make the bus. The splitter is probably the best example of that. And as you can see, I'm sitting here waiting for it to manufacture in my pocket. But a splitter will basically just take everything comes in, and split it exactly half and half. So this is probably a bad layout to show an example. So I'll build one over here. And I'll just go ahead and drop some material on here. And then we'll go ahead and show how it works basically here. So as you can see, literally just half and half. I didn't count how many I placed, but half of the material will go on the top, half on the bottom. Another thing to note is you just stole my transport belt. Another thing to note is that if you put it on the one side of the belt or the other, that sidedness is maintained. So it won't necessarily split if it's on different sides. So let's see if I can get this exactly placed. There we go. So you can see there's one on the bottom, one on the top. It's split to left and right. First one on the right, next one on the left, but it did nothing about the sidedness. You can see here again, we'll do a couple of examples. Did nothing about the sidedness, it just switched left to right, or top to bottom, depending on how you look at it. So I utilize this, well, almost everywhere. It's a very common way of dealing with materials, but I've kind of created this layout here. You can see a mouse split the input. We can imagine this will be, I don't have any on me, but this will be maybe an iron input. You want to send a bunch down here to get smelted, but if you have extra, you don't want it just backed up because maybe you want to run another column right next to it. So you need to send the extra down this lane. And there are a number of ways of doing that. The easiest and probably the one we'll use for quite a while is pretty much to split it half and half. The one will get backed up and then everything will go down the other. Later, probably much later, we'll get into some other ways of being a little more kind of priority about it. You can imagine you don't care about sending material down the bus if there's no use for it down the bus. You want to send everything into your column, but then when the column's full, you then want to enable sending down the bus. And there are ways of doing that, but like I said, we'll get to that a little bit later. Of course, I have no material to finish building this.
And what I'm doing right now is just filling out the inserters that we're going to need to get everything going. It obviously takes quite a lot of these inserters to, as a matter of fact, I just built a ton and still need more. But eventually this is going to pay dividends for us by producing a ton of iron plates for us. Because right now, I would consider this kind of on life support in a way, because you have to come over and do a lot of manual things. I don't know if life support's the right word, but not in the working order it should be in.
Yes, there's definitely a lot of manual effort required, and you know, as we said, the name of this game is automation, so you really don't want to have to do any manual work at all. Now, you may be curious why I have these kind of lingering transport belts here to this 4 width, and that's because eventually we're going to need 4 lanes of ore. We're going to be consuming, it seems a little crazy right now, but we're going to be consuming so much ore that we're going to need more than 1 lane, up to 4. And the reason I only go up to 4 is primarily because these underground belts, which do exactly what they would seem, can only stretch 4 units long. So it's helpful to space your kind of bus lanes in these 4 unit segments so you can run these underground pieces. And then I'll do it again here, run 1 underground, because you can see here I'm splitting the incoming iron ore, but it's all on one side. That's why these splitters are directly opposing, because it forces this belt to only accept on the one side. Now, these furnaces, if they had power, would accept the ore, but only run until they ran out of fuel. So that's what this extra lane is here going to be. And this little layout is somewhat common, but super useful to be able to just bring in. You can imagine if we brought in coal right here, and then feeding it in on the opposite side of this splitter here, and we'll end up sending coal down the other side of the belt, ready for the furnaces to fuel themselves. And that might be our next priority, I think. Oh, good. You're already working on it.
Yep, I'm bringing coal over. I don't know if I'm doing it in a pretty way, but there we go.
Yeah, it's probably not the long-term solution, but as I've said before, I sometimes get too distracted by the long-term solution and just need to get things running.
Okay, so where do you want the coal ultimately? Do you want it over on this track down here?
Right, so the way I think eventually we'll set it up is we'll have these 4 up here will all be iron. These 4 will be copper.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll leave another 2 space here. And then down here, we can have extra materials, whatever we need. think we only probably need one lane of coal.
So this
We'll
one
run-
right here is your coal input though, right? This underground
right.
belt.
That's right. And I'll just complete that there. And that will be our coal.
Okay. So for right now, I'm just going to use an underground belt to bring it over, but as we discussed, that's not really the long-term solution.
Yeah, the long-term solution is actually trains and robots, but we're a long way away from all of that.
Okay.
There we go. Now we just need power, and that would be a good conclusion. Of course, I don't have poles.
I do. So we'll just draw it from over here. Oh, there he goes.
I can make poles. This is the annoying part. There's no neat way of doing this. I've come to conclude. Unfortunate. Over the series, you'll notice that I'm kind of OCD, especially with these power poles. It causes problems.
And did we ever mention how the overlap works on the power poles? So the area around the power pole is what is being powered. So to power these two things, I have to cover them with that some power poles area. And you always see that kind of purplish, bluish underline of the power pole to let you know where the power is being supplied.
Yep. And now we have automated smelting.
And I think that's a good point to go ahead and put a cut in the video. So I hope you guys have enjoyed. This is Mouse Gunner and Rotype signing out.